Hello and welcome to Ginger Prime. My name's Brian, and if you're a returning subscriber, what's up, Soul Nation? Thanks for coming and checking out this Final Fantasy XIV White Mage controller guide. In this guide, I'm going to take you through my controller setup, tips, tricks, everything to hopefully make it comfortable for you to play the White Mage in Final Fantasy XIV, especially when using a controller. Now, this is set up for any level range. In the game, you can actually preset skills, and as you level up, it's going to just naturally fall and become accessible on your hotbar. But at the end of the day, I'm hoping that this is just a recommendation for you. Ideally, you're going to take this and make it your own, and hopefully, if you learn something along the way, let me know in the comments below. I'm here to hopefully help, and that's the goal for these guides. But let's go ahead and take some time. Let's go ahead and dive into the White Mage. It is a fantastic job. It is by far my favorite healer in the game, and that's saying something because the other two healers are no slouches whatsoever. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into the White Mage. And as always, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. So to kick things off right, here's the White Mage, and I'm going to start with my UI, and then we're going to go into my settings. If I go to Start, System, and then HUD Layout, you're going to see lots of tools, lots of things to choose from. Personally, I have a simplified gauge for my healing gauge. We'll talk about that more when we get into my skills and stuff. You can also check the playhead of this video to jump around, and also in the description of this video, if you're looking for more content, Final Fantasy wise or others, podcasts, playlists, check it out, and let me know if you have any questions about any of that. Anyhow, I do use hotbar 3. This is an important hotbar because it does not have any numbers on the skills. This keeps things clean for myself. It just makes it overall look well. You can go ahead and use any hotbar you want, but I like to start with 3. I am not actually clicking on any of these skills. This is just to communicate cooldowns and information to me. I want to make sure that I'm nourishing the Blood Lily and bringing in that pain whenever possible here on this quote-unquote healer as a as a damage dealer in a way. So that being said, I've got my party list over here. I've seen some healers be able to drag and drop this into different areas, whatever is most comfortable for you, but I pretty much keep my party list standard up here in the left-hand side of the screen, and then I have my enemy list here. This is usually just kind of kept where I've kept it from all the others. I've got cross hotbar left and cross hotbar right, so I'm using the double crossbar hotbar setup. I'll show you guys that here in a little bit. And then my main crossbar down here, limit gauge, experience bar. All of this is just preference. What I do enjoy is I have my enhancements and my enfeeblements split out. You can do so under the system settings, and you can say split elements into 3 groups. This allows me to say, hey, here's my buffs, here's my things that are making it worse and harder on me, and here's my status effects like food, free company buffs, things of that nature. If you guys have any questions over the UI, again, we've done deep dives into the UI before to hopefully help get you going, and so I'm going to just go ahead and say okay on that. Now let's go ahead and jump quickly into our character configuration and then our hotbar settings. This is really where everything comes together. I first have hide unassigned slots turned on. You can see if I've got that turned off, you have a lot of gray floating bars. I personally don't like that. It's up to you. I also say display hotbar numbers. I have that turned off so I don't have these random floating numbers here on the screen. The reason why I have all of these hotbars set up is that, especially when I'm playing DPS classes, I like to feed myself various rotations. So especially whether I'm learning or if I just need I don't need to commit everything to memory, especially if I'm playing more than one job. That's just going to be kind of like how I use it and how I teach it. Go from there. Under sharing, I have everything except for 8, 9, and 10 set to individually jobs. So if it's checked, that means every job is going to have the same skills. You only have to set it once and you're good to go. So on the cross hotbar, I have it set to 7 and 8, and I'll show that off here later on in the video. But 1 through 6 is always going to be specific to the job that I'm on. Now under cross hotbar, I use hold mode. You can play around with toggle and mix, but some of the settings are not going to be available to you if you choose to do that. I also say always display the cross hotbars on, and I have turned off display crossbar hotbar help. However, you can turn this on, and if so, whenever you hold down the trigger, it's going to have the names floating above it to help feed you information about what that skill is. As you learn the skills and you get more acquainted with their icon, you'll end up not needing that. So that's just how you control that and set it from there. I also have display W cross hotbar input, return myself to the main cross hotbar after using the W cross hotbar. So these act as kind of one-off abilities. I'm not jumping into that for a rotation. And I also have position the W cross hotbar separately. Now I could basically turn this off and you could see it just kind of slightly adjusts these things for me. So it's really up to you if you want to have that on or off. I've been keeping it where I can customize it, but you know, just for the sake of it, I'll go ahead and apply and have it set up that way for now. Then finally, under custom, I have enable expanded controls with left trigger and right trigger. This means when I hold down the left trigger and then hold the right trigger, I get a whole new hotbar. And this is actually linked to hotbar 2 left, back to the sharing tab, which means that it's specific to my job. But holding down right trigger and then left trigger, this is hotbar 7 right. This is shared. So this is where I put my limit break. This is where I put my mounts, my minions, all that good stuff. And that's how I set up my Wondrous Tales, and which I should go ahead and make sure I get that marked off and keep collecting those. Because guys, if you aren't aware, if you're leveling up, you're actually going to get experience for turning in your Wondrous Tales. I'm level 80, don't need it here, but this is just an extra piece of content to help level it up. And as you do content, let's say if I went and run a level 80 dungeon, I eventually get my tabs, I go turn this book in on a character that needs experience, and boom, major experience boost overall. So don't ignore your Wondrous Tales. If you need more help on Wondrous Tales, let me know. I can see if I can put something concrete together from a leveling guide perspective. So anyway, that's the left trigger and the right trigger. Then you have the double tap for the W cross hotbar. Back to that real briefly. If you're having trouble, if you need accessibility, like it's just, you're not getting the double tap fast enough, you can play around with your timer to make that a little bit easier, a little bit to jump in and out of that. But you cannot set skills on it. I can't drag and drop a skill right there. And the reason is because of this is actually linked in this case to 3 left and 3 right. So if I wanted to, let me just go ahead and close out of this real quick, jump over to 3. Let's say I wanted to drag this onto 3. I can do so, and you can see it immediately pops up here because all of these are just kind of like little preview windows that you can access by double tapping as opposed to tabbing with the R bumper. If you guys aren't aware, you can see here if I just tab R bumper, I only have it jumping between 1, 7, and 8, 7 and 8 being shared. And in this case, 1 being not. Now, if I want to jump to a specific, I can hold down right bumper and use the up, down, left, right, A, B, X, Y to be able to jump through all 8 cross hotbars that are set up. So again, back to character configuration, to manage this, you can actually have it say enable customization when weapon is sheathed, hotbar 1, 7, and 8. So that's all that I'm going to tab through. And I can say enable customization when my weapon is drawn. It's going to keep me locked in 7. So if I have my weapon out, which you can press down on the left click, left stick itself. Now if I tap R bumper, nothing's happening. It's going to keep me locked there. That way I don't end up in no man's land going like, oh no, my skills are different because in the heat of the moment, something's changed, etc. So just kind of play around with that. And anyway, like I was saying with the W cross hotbar, I actually also have it enabled with the directional buttons, but if you want to simplify it a little bit more, you could set it to only 4 buttons and have a little bit cleaner of an appearance if you weren't using all of it. I wish we could hide unassigned slots for these. We don't have that ability yet, but that's my feedback that I put out on the forums, and I'll keep asking for it. It's such a small thing, but it just kind of means the world to me. And then finally, again, double tap left, 3 left, and then double tap 3 right. Now I said that earlier I was doing my return to cross hotbar input. You can see I can use this skill and immediately I'm back into my main area. So that's just kind of how that's set up. So play around with that. Let me go ahead and actually cast an attack so I can start filling up my Lily gauge. As you can see here, that's timing up. Now that I'm in attack mode and I don't have 3 of my lilies, it's going to fill up the bar till I get 3. Here's really where the mechanics of White Mage come into play from a damage perspective. You can see here right now, Aphelios Mastery is on my cooldown. I have it right front and center because this is going to be my biggest hitting attack as a White Mage. So it says it deals unexpected damage to the target and all nearby enemies with a potency of 900 for the first enemy and 25% less for all remaining enemies. But you got to have your Blood Lily in full bloom. That's 3 stacks of the red icons here. Now, to nourish your Blood Lily, you have a couple ways of doing that. You have Aphelios Rapture, which essentially is a AoE cure, and that's why I actually have it over here, and we'll go through my whole layout. But I just want to talk about the Blood Lily in this UI for a second. So you have Rapture, and then you also have Aphelios Solace. This is going to also nourish the Blood Lily. These are your 2 things that are going to feed this meter. They have no cooldown. They're instant cast, or the recast is actually very quick, but they do require a lily to fill up. So in this case, I can actually cast those 3 things pretty quickly with 3 lilies, and that's going to start filling up. And I can also, I've got 1 misery in the chamber, so to speak. So Anyway, we'll go and we'll go through all the skills here right now just to kind of give you guys an idea of how I've got it set up. So Temperance is my level 80 ability. It's got a 2-minute cooldown, but you can see here it's going to increase my healing magic potency and also reduce damage taken to nearby party members by 10%. So this is a really good skill, but the fact is it's got a 2-minute recast, so in a typical dungeon run, you should be able to pop Temperance a couple different times. Don't sit on it just because it's got a 2-minute cooldown. Just kind of start to get a good feel for when you're going to go into a boss, or if you're in a boss fight, when big things are coming up. That's just usually kind of situationally aware of the skills and what's happening. Then I have Affluous Misery. We talked about that as part of the Blood Lily being my big AoE hitter. I have it front and center. I don't want to drop this. I want to be able to put out that damage. It is powerful and I want to use it, especially because it's from a ranged. We got Holy here locked down behind me, in this case with the LT-RT, and I do love my Holy, but it is nice and it doesn't, in my mind, compare to Misery because I don't have to run in and risk myself. Then I've got Swift Cast, 60-second recast. This is a 1-minute timer. This is a great cross-roll skill. I want to make sure I'm using it. I do have it locked here behind in the double cross hotbar from the LT-RT. Sorry, just the expanded cross hotbar. So many names. And then I have it also here on the W cross hotbar. So I have a lot of different ways to be able to get access to it without having to think too hard about it. The goal, from especially as a controller player, has to be focused in on muscle memory, making things as easy for you to do. I'll be updating more of the healers here on the channel with the controller guides as well, and so you'll see some similarities where skills are placed as a part of how they function. But anyway, so that's kind of the cooldown bar. Over here on the double tap left, I've got Surecast. This is going to help nullify any kind of interruption, knockback, and draw-in effects for 6 seconds. 2-minute recast on that one. Repose puts enemies to sleep. I often don't ever really use this. This is probably more for if you're playing as a single player through the story. You need to not be overwhelmed by enemies. Repose ends up doing a good job of that. Lucid Dreaming is going to help gradually restore my own MP for 21 seconds. Don't sleep on this. This is really critical, especially if you get into damage rotation phases. The fact is it's got a 60-second recast, so every 60 seconds there's no harm in putting it on. And then you've got Divine Benson. Then you have that essentially where it creates a barrier. You'll notice that I've got Divine Benson located in 2 spots on 2 sides. So if I'm in attack mode and I really need to shield somebody, I can do so easily without having to think about it. And it's the same button combination, whether I'm LT and RT here for that. And just the fact that it's an instacast and it's got a short recast time, that's why I want to make sure I'm just popping that on no matter what. You can use macros, and we'll talk about that. I'll show some examples with Target of My Target here towards the end of the video, if you want to be able to keep your focus on the tank and thus let your damage skills do that. Or anyway, we'll play around with some macros here later in a bit. Anyhow, on the left-hand side, here I've got Thin Air, Presence of Mind. Thin Air is obviously going to make spells free. You got another 2-minute recast timer here, and this is great. Honestly, I would say keep popping this off. You kind of maybe alternate this, or pair this up with Lucid Dreaming, and you're going to find yourself always having MP and never really struggling with it, in my personal experience. Presence of Mind is going to reduce your spell recast time and the overall cast time of that, as well as auto attack, by 20%. So it's a little bit longer than 2 minutes for Presence of Mind, but this is really good whether you're trying to heal everybody up really fast or even putting out extra damage. So this doesn't necessarily need to be sit on for just healing phases. It can also be used for damage phases as well. Lane Curing is a macro. Essentially, just to fire this off, it's going to say wherever my target I am facing, and it's going to put down my healing land ability, and we'll go over that in detail here in a little bit. And then I have Affluous Rapture. This is the reason why it's here as a part of my damage sign, is this is going to nourish my Blood Lily, but this is an AoE, HP, and Restore, so you can see that I can use that right here. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and use Rapture, or Affluous Misery, excuse me, to pop off my Blood Lily. And now you can see I can't use it, but I am filling it up, and I can start charging that up pretty quickly with those different charges. So now I'm at 2 charges, and once that fills up, I'll be able to get that ready to go. Glare and Dia, these are upgraded skills. So if we just go into actions and traits and actions, this is pretty much coming from Stone and Arrow. So as you level up, you can just have Stone and Arrow on your bar, and this is going to eventually turn into Glare and Dia, which essentially just kind of is your 2 damaging abilities. Then I have a Size, and this is it's great little AoE. What this does is also restores a little MP to you, but also will restore HP and MP of your nearby party members and your own. And it also deals unaspected damage with a potency of 400 to all nearby enemies. So you're attacking, you're healing. It's the whole thing, the whole theme of the White Mage. So that's why it exists over here. And with a 45-second recast, it is not that hard to get back into. And then Affluous Misery, looks like we've got some Blood Lilies. I can get access to that. Again, I have now nourished my Lily, and we go from there. This, honestly, with the changes in tanking, we've had in the past conversations about overhealing. This kind of changes that. This kind of breaks it. I think it's probably more important to be able to get into Misery than worrying about if you're overhealing anybody. I would say either Rapture or Solace are more important spells to cast, if at all possible, just so that they end up feeding your Lily as opposed to any other healing spell like Cure 1 or Cure 2. That's going to vary based off of a situation. So don't take that as the gospel truth in that way. All right, now let's go ahead and go to our right side. I've got Cure and Cure 2. Cure 2 can proc off of Cure 1 with a 15% chance that your Cure 2 is not going to cost any MP. So that's nice. However, especially if you're managing your MP well, it really just depends on what you really need. I find that sometimes casting Cure 2 over and over again works just fine without issue, and you get that additional potency. But from an MP cost, it goes up to 1,000. So you could easily burn your MP with 1,000. So maybe pair that with Thin Air Lucid Dreaming if you need to do a Cure 2 spam. Tetragrammaton is a great spell. 60-second recast, going to have a cure potency of 700. So it's like a free insta-cure that you have access to. And then I have Regen. You'll notice with these two spells, these are insta-cast. And so this gives me the ability to move around on the controller without struggling too much. Tetragrammaton right here as well. So I can move and cast. In this case, it's got a little cooldown itself. Then I've got Affluous Rapture, again, pairing it exactly where it is on this side so that if I'm in a curing phase, really need to drop that on, I can do so. Now, what I would say is that if you're doing a lot of AoE curing, make sure you pop that at Plenary Indulgence. It's going to add that Confession stack, but Confession works based off of needing a healing happens. So it adds an additional cure potency, especially whenever you then follow it up via Medica 2, Cure 2, or excuse me, Cure 3 in this case, which is an AoE cure. And I honestly just use this so infrequently, I've gone ahead and moved it up to this bar here at the top so that I have a little bit more room for pretty much what I would say Medica 2, Rapture, and Plenary Indulgence as a part of my AoE returning, trying to get the whole party up as quickly as possible. Obviously, Rapture being an instacast to help kind of offset that, feeding my Lily itself. Then Medica 2 applying that Regen effect, and Medica 1 having more cure potency for the group, but still, getting people up and going. You'll see that with Rapture and Medica 1, Rapture has no cast time. It's obviously going off of this, your main Lily system, and it has the same potency as Medica. So I would prioritize Affluous Rapture if it's available, if you need, to get people up quick, or essentially then Medica itself, and also Medica 2, which is going to help sustain healing over time, for 15 seconds. So it's quite powerful. There's so much curing power with the White Mage. It's almost ridiculous. All right, I don't even know, like in the next expansion, what's going to happen, but we'll have to wait and see. All right, we've talked about this side, so let's cover Benediction. Insecure restores all your target's HP, 180-second recast, so it's got a longer cooldown time. The problem with this is that you need to be ready with it. Like, it's the number of times that this has gone off and it actually hasn't cured anybody can be frustrating, especially because then no matter what, it's still going to be on cooldown. So if you think you should use it, you probably should have used it before you had that thought pop in your mind. So just note, it's okay, especially on big pulls. Feel free to put out Benediction. Temperance, we covered this. This is a great skill. Don't sit on it. It's not got that long of a cooldown. You can pop this off multiple times in any kind of run, upping your healing and reducing damage taken by others. Affluous Solace. So just like when we talk about Rapture, this is another spell that nourishes that Lily. But if you see that potency of 700, it should not be sat on. Just like with Cure and with Tetragrammaton, this is a 700 ability. And with the fact that it's a Lily, honestly, you could even switch these out quite easily because this doesn't have the cooldown. It's all just based off the Lily timer, and it's got the same potency. It's real powerful. Benson, again, like we covered earlier, it's got to apply that shield, and what this is great to have it kind of that same spot so you can kind of shield, do some pre-curing essentially. I've moved Insuna over here because it's not as important that I find. It's important to be able to take things off of people. debuffs, etc. But overall, I find that this is a lot more beneficial, especially in the quick turnaround, and then I can kind of manage that. I put Cure 3 right there. I have an Ether. You can put anything you want right there. And then I have Swift Cast listed right here as well. Now on to page 2. I've got Rescue. And the reason I have it here is that if I'm running around and I need to target a friend, I can rescue them and pull them towards me, which is very handy. Then I have Swift Cast, Quick Access if I need to be able to quick raise. I also can Quick Holy, so I can actually pop off a couple of different holies. It's got a longer little cast time, great AoE, plus the stun effect, but if I want to be able to pop off holy after holy after holy, I can do so that way and be able to get a couple of good AoEs in. Following that up with the size, which ends up just adding in more damage, healing as well. So it's a great ability. Then I also put Thin Air over here as well, just so help to save me some of that. And then I have Fluid Aura, which is going to bind the target in place. It's good for crowd control, but not as important, especially with certain bosses in the game itself. Whew, that's a lot that we've just covered as a part of my layout. Hopefully you're still with me. And if you got any questions, obviously let me know in the comments below. I promised macros, and that's where we're going to go to next as I look here at land curing. Asylum is what the name of the spell is, and you can see here it's going to put Asylum at my target's feet. And so just to give you guys some information about Asylum and what it does, let's go find it here. This is going to have that cure potency of 100. It's going to have 24 seconds. This is massive, especially with a 90-second recast. Like, this is pretty much like you're going to have it up like almost for 30 seconds and a recast of 90. So think about it where there's just a minute, almost a little bit over a minute where you're not using this. This is going to increase your HP recovering via healing actions on party members in the designated area by 10%, and also have that 24-second regen with a potency of 100. This is a really great ability, and you should definitely make sure you have that out there, because that's going to allow you to do more damage with Dia and Glare. And so Dia is going to be your spell with a dot over time. I might recommend applying this first, and then that way that's going to just tick down, and then you can Glare, and then whenever your Aphilus Misery is up, kick ass and take names that way. All right, back into macros. Use a macros. So we talk about that. You can see here, you can do different things with it. So you see ME as a way of targeting self. If I go find a macro, excuse me for 1 second, within the shared tab probably. Yes. So look here, just as a part of an Astrologian, Minor Arcana. When you see TT, this is target of my target. So if you're targeting your tank as a healer, if you want to use and put an attack spell or into your macro slot, you can keep your target focused in on your tank. That way any healing that you do is always going to hit them first if you want to be safe about it. And then any attack spell, so if I wanted to move this and Glare and Dia and have TT, then that's actually going to use my tank's target. So my target's target is what that's going to be. So you can kind of play around with that and kind of set up something. You can see here Arrow and Stone, which is the old names of the spells. So you can see here that's what I've used in sometimes. And you can also add Focus Target, so that way if you focus someone's target, they actually show up on the UI. So if I just do that, Focus Target, I'm now going to get this extra bar, and it's kind of hidden under my quest list, because typically I only focus targets in content, and I actually have that set to auto hide when I'm in that piece of content. We talked about the UI, we talked about my layout, we talked about my controller setup. There's a lot, and obviously this guide I feel is running a little bit long. Hopefully you found it useful. If there's any questions you have about the White Mage, about how you do this job, let me know as well, always in the comments below. Hopefully this has been a help and you've enjoyed it. Again, my name's Brian and this is Ginger Prime. If you feel like you've earned it, hit the subscribe button. Come back for more video game content from Final Fantasy, Destiny, and like Minecraft Dungeons. I'm really enjoying that game as well. So again, like if you think about it, if it's a multiplayer RPG, I'd love to talk about it, and hopefully you enjoy it as well. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap up. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you have a fantastic day. And thanks to Ethan for hitting that join button, WG Productions for hitting that join button. You've been really just a blessing, and thank you so much. Hopefully you enjoy your emotes. But anyway, like I said, until next time, take care. This video is sponsored by me, Ginger Prime. Hopefully you'll check out my podcast channel, Ginger Gaming Radio, which we have lots of guests, lots of great conversations, and even more highlights. Links are in the description below. Let me know what you think. Thanks.